Loving and gracious God, you are the giver of all good gifts, the source of all love and human rights. We thank you for all the rights and privileges we are enjoying, which have been fought long and hard by our founding fathers and ancestors. Today, we meet with members of Congress to find ways to bring these basic rights to other people in Vietnam as well. Guide our hearts and our mind in a spirit of fairness, love for basic human rights, freedom of thought, speech, and worship. Impart your supreme wisdom upon our activities today. Lạy Đấng tối cao, chúng con là đoàn con Việt ly hương hôm nay thứ Ba, mùng 4 tháng 6, tụ họp nhau đây để gặp gỡ Quốc hội Hoa Kỳ, tìm cách giúp quê hương Việt Nam chúng con được ấm no và thịnh vượng, người dân Việt được tự do thờ phượng và hưởng những quyền căn bản của con người. Xin giúp chúng con sự dũng cảm để nói lên tiếng nói của sự thật, sự khôn ngoan để biết thực hiện các chương trình đúng đắn, tấm lòng nhân hậu để biết thương xót những người còn hoạn nạn, và tấm lòng khiêm tốn để biết lắng nghe và đoàn kết với nhau. Xin cho các tôn giáo biết đoàn kết và nâng đỡ nhau trên con đường tìm về chân thiện mỹ và mưu tìm hạnh phúc cho quê hương. Chúng con cùng cầu xin Thượng Đế. We pledge our allegiance to the flags of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Xin cảm ơn quý vị. Xin mời quý vị ngồi.
Joe, welcome. On behalf of the House Republican Conference and the Foreign Affairs Committee, I want to welcome you to Washington, D.C. and to the People's House. We have a lot of introductory remarks to make, but because we have some members here who are on a tight schedule, we'll go ahead and have them speak first. It's my pleasure to introduce Congresswoman Ileana Ros-Lehtinen from Florida.
Well, thank you very much. I am so honored to be here. Thank you to Congressman Joseph Gao for putting this together. Thank you to the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee, Congressman Ed Royce, for putting this together. Let's give them both a big hand. And I know that there are other members of Congress here who will be speaking to you in just a few minutes. We have Greg Walden, who is here. And we have, from my home state of Florida, Dr. Ted Yoho, who was a new member of Congress, and we're thrilled that we're here. And if any other members came, I'm sorry I didn't see them. But I am so glad and so pleased and honored to have the opportunity to say hello to you. Today's meetup is an important avenue for members of Congress and the Vietnamese American leaders to get together and share in an exchange of ideas on the most pressing issues in the hearts and minds of everyone gathered here today. The Vietnamese American community is a large and active part of our American society, and it is important that both of us engage in direct conversations so that we can convey our concerns to one another. Now, like many of you, I am a political refugee who had to flee communist rule. I was born in Cuba, came to the United States when I was 8 years old. So I know, just like you know, how important it is to be involved in the political process and how to express your freedoms as Americans. That's a badge of honor that all of us naturalized Americans take very seriously, something that you hold so near and dear. Because these rights are something that you never could have imagined having in Vietnam, sadly, and I can't imagine them being present in the Cuba of today. But I still marvel about how amazing it is that a political refugee from Cuba who came here as a little girl, who did not know a word of English, is now a member of the United States Congress. And that says a lot, not about me, it says a lot about this great country, the opportunities that are available for all of us, whether you were born in Vietnam, whether you were born in Cuba, or whether your family has been here generations. And that's why I have been such a staunch supporter of the Vietnamese American community, because I know how important it is for you every day to call attention to what is going on in your native land, the gross human rights abuses and the violations that are occurring every day in Vietnam. Essential liberties like freedom of the press, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of association, freedom of religion, all of those have been denied to the people of Vietnam. Religious activists are routinely harassed, they're intimidated, they're imprisoned, and much like those in my native homeland in Cuba, it happens every day. Well, Vietnamese citizens are also subject to this brutal treatment from the police, they suffer with inhumane prison conditions. They're denied the right to a free and fair and speedy trial. So I'm a strong advocate of human rights throughout the world. I remain committed to speaking out against the abhorrent abuses that continue under communist rule, whether it's in Vietnam or whether it's in my native homeland of Cuba. And I am so glad that we have a great leader, not just in Joseph Gao, who's a great guy, but also the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee, Ed Royce. He's taken this problem of Vietnam to the highest levels. I want to push for Vietnam to be placed as a country of particular concern. That's a State Department classification that is reserved for countries where they violate religious freedom. And in Vietnam, they are violating the religious freedom of the community there. So I'm a proud co-sponsor of the bill, House Resolution 218, that calls for that designation, because the promotion of basic human rights, the promotion of dignity for all people is a cornerstone for you, and it's a cornerstone for me. It's a cornerstone of our United States foreign policy. So I look forward to working with the Vietnamese American community throughout the United States, and we're going to work together to make America stronger so that we can push the world to get rid of communist dictatorships or socialist dictatorships, whatever they're using, whatever is the term of the day. They're authoritarian thugs, whether it's in Vietnam or in Cuba, because people deserve to be free. That is a God-given gift, and no one should be denied their freedom. So I'm Ileana Ross-Leighton from Miami. Let's hear it for Florida. Where's our Florida group? Yay, Florida. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Xin kính chào quý vị. First off, I just want to thank everyone who dedicate your time, your energy, and I'm pretty sure a lot of money to come to this Advocacy Day. But it's extremely important for all of us to express what our concerns are, to let Congress know what we demand from the Vietnamese American communities. They fully understand the issue of human rights and religious freedom. And one of the main persons in the Congress who over the past couple of decades has been the voice of the Vietnamese American in Congress is Chairman Ed Royce. The chairman is the representative from the state of California. He was the author of the Vietnam Sanctions Act. He is also trying to push through the Vietnam Human Rights Act. So any legislation that passes through the House must first go through Chairman Ed Royce. But we don't have to concern ourselves very much, because he has been a great friend to the Vietnamese American community. He has been a great champion for human rights and religious freedom in Vietnam. So here again, I want to introduce to you Chairman Ed Royce.
Keen Chau Quivi. Are there any Californians here today? How about from Virginia? Texas? From all over the country, because 30 different states are represented here, Vietnamese Americans. And one of the reasons I think it is so important that you're here in Washington to talk to your representatives, and you'll have an opportunity later to talk to the members of the House and the members of the Senate. But I think it's important because some of the best ideas have come out of the community. And I wanted to give you a quick example. And that goes to a concept years ago in Orange County, California, of trying to rename an area of town in my district, in the state Senate, Little Saigon. And it was the idea of a Vietnamese American on my staff at the time that we could, on the state map, get a designation, Little Saigon, and that we could get street signs made from the Department of Transportation and put them up. Little Saigon. How many of you have been to Little Saigon, California? All right? It's not so little anymore, you know? It's now parts of 4 cities in the region: Westminster, Garden Grove, Santa Ana, Fountain Valley. But that happened as a result of the engagement of the community. But now I want to share with you another idea that came from the community. And that was the idea of Radio Free Asia, the types of broadcasting we would do into Vietnam, and the idea that in Tinian Island we would build the largest broadcasting transmitter in the world so that we could more effectively broadcast into the country. That's an idea from the community. Congressman Joseph Gao, when he was here in Congress, worked very diligently to try to put Vietnam back on the CPC list. I have legislation to do that. He testified in favor of that bill. We got that through the House. This year, I think, because of a new chairman on the Senate Foreign Affairs Committee, we have an excellent chance of getting it into law. Let me just share with you why we need to do it. We need to apply pressure on the government inside Vietnam because of its violations of human rights, because of its violations of religious freedom. And what concerns me most is the backsliding in Vietnam. In the first few months of this year, we have had show trials of 40 different Vietnamese who have been imprisoned. Now, that is more than all of last year. And as we try to explain to the State Department, it is only when we bring pressure to bear that we get results. Remember years ago in Nicaragua, we pushed for free elections in that country. And we said, if we're going to engage, one of the requirements has to be elections. And sure enough, things changed in the country as a result of those elections. We need to be pressing on more than just the radio broadcast that we do now, on more than just the trips that we take to Vietnam. I had an opportunity when I was in Vietnam to visit various political prisoners. And one who I visited was the Venerable Thich Quang Do. And for those of us that are concerned about what has happened to the Unified Buddhist Church of Vietnam, to the Woodhall Church, Buddhist Church of Vietnam, to Cao Dai, to the Protestants, to the Catholics, to across the board, every element in that society, he spoke to the ways in which, he told me, the ways in which the regime attempts to change the meanings of the historical religion, tries to change the culture, and why it was so important for him to continue to stand up, and why we could not acknowledge the Communist Party's manifesto as a replacement for the culture. One of the things that you're doing by remaining engaged in this struggle is to make certain that the next generation of young Vietnamese Do not forget their culture. Do not forget their principles. Don't lose sight of the freedom. And one of the things he shared with me in that conversation is just as freedom eventually came to East Germany, to Poland, to the Czech Republic, freedom will eventually come to Vietnam. But to get to that goal, it is this nation which has the Statue of Liberty with that torch as a beacon. And the United States has to stand true to our principles. All people are created equal, right? All people in the world have these rights, God-given rights of freedom. And as chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee, and I won't go into the graphic details of some of the cases that we've gotten involved in. We've been able to get people out of prisons. We're very well aware of, what has happened to those who speak out, the long prison terms, the beatings, those who try to practice their religion. But my commitment to you today is, as you stay engaged on behalf of freedom in Vietnam, we will stay engaged. As chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee, I will push this legislation through again this year to put pressure on the regime to get Vietnam back on the CPC list. And we will push the Vietnam Human Rights Act, and we will continue to broadcast into the country. When we travel to Vietnam, we'll continue to insist that we meet with political prisoners in Vietnam. We'll call for their release, we'll demand their release. But let's do one thing more. You're in Washington. And just as I shared with you the idea that came from the Vietnamese community about getting the signage, getting the signs on the freeway, getting the designation from the state of California for Little Saigon, think about what can help your local community. And also, when you're meeting with us, share with us your ideas. There are many entrepreneurs, many small business people here. All of you have various concerns. Bring those up with your members of Congress. That's part of the system. Let's have a dialogue about issues of importance to the community. And let me just close by thanking all of you. And I know, for those of you who have gotten to know Congressman Joseph Gao, as I have over the years, we have a deep respect for how he continues to stay engaged on behalf of human rights. I close by thanking him for that engagement, but I also close by thanking each and every one of you for making the trip all the way out here to call for freedom and also to have your voices heard in Washington, D.C. Thank you very much.
So you have heard Chairman Royce's promises, and members of Congress cannot get things done unless we stand behind and support what they're trying to do. So our voices are extremely important. The next person I would like to introduce to you is Representative Greg Walden. He is the chairman of the National Republican Congressional Committee. This is a very great time for our Vietnamese American community for the very main reason that the House Majority Leadership are trying to reach into our community to hear what our concerns are and to hear what we want to get things done from Congress. And one of the main persons who are spearheading that effort is Congressman Greg Walden. Thank you.
Chào buổi sáng. I'm honored to be here this morning. I'm honored that you are here this morning to share with us things we need to know, to speak out on behalf of human rights and religious rights all across the world, but especially in Vietnam. We are so fortunate first to have had Joseph Gao as a member of Congress, the first Vietnamese American, the only Vietnamese American to serve, but not the last Vietnamese American to serve in the Congress. Joseph, thank you for your leadership. And we're also very fortunate to have Ed Royce as chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee. When I first was elected to the Congress back in 1998 and came in 99, Mr. Royce, who I barely knew at the time, asked me if I'd like to go to Vietnam with him as part of the Foreign Relations Committee. It was my first trip overseas. And I saw how he worked and how he stood up for human rights. In fact, he sort of snuck out one morning so nobody was watching and went and met with religious leaders privately so he could hear firsthand the unfiltered information. And he has stood up for peoples all across the country, all across the world, who have been repressed by their governments. And he has certainly stood up for the people of Vietnam and for those in America who believe in freedom, freedom of economic, freedom of religion, and freedom of human rights. Today, Joseph Gao and Ed Royce will have a subcommittee hearing that Joseph will testify at, as will others, about repression in Vietnam. It takes place at 2:30 today in 2172 Rayburn House Office Building. It's really important, if you can, that you be there. Now, I know you've come from all over the country. Is there anybody here from Oregon? There we go. From one end of the country to the other. We actually have Oregonians here, and we appreciate it. Thank you for speaking up. Look forward to getting to see you across the country as I travel the nation with my colleagues, and we'll continue to fight for human rights and freedom in Vietnam and all across the world. Thank you very much.
The next congressman that I would like to introduce to you is a new member to the U.S. House. So he has not been at least exposed to the issues of the Vietnamese American communities as other members such as Ed Royce, Greg Walden, Chris Smith. But he is here to find out what our concerns are. So I would like to introduce to you Representative Woodhall from Georgia.
Since everyone's doing their home state shout out, where are the Georgians who are here today? No, I can't believe there's not a Georgian in the crowd. They have a separate meeting going on right now. Thank you for confessing to that meeting going on. They said there might be a translator here today for the southern accents that came from Georgia, and since no one here is from Georgia, you may need that help. Ileana told her story about being a first-generation American. I want to ask the question, how many folks were born in America? Where are the hands of folks? Because what I want to say to you is you and I share the very same story, and that is that someone in our life did something exceptional to give us the opportunity to grow up here. Doesn't happen by accident. Someone had to make amazing sacrifices on our behalf to give us the opportunity to do what we do today. And while the sign behind me says House Republican Conference, I think Republican means something different in California than it does in Georgia. I think it means something different in New York than it does in Texas. What I see when I see Republican is freedom and opportunity. Where are the small business owners, the entrepreneurs in this crowd? That's the district that I represent. I come from a majority-minority county in Georgia. We have, and you may not know in Georgia, one of the largest Vietnamese populations in the nation. And opportunity is one of those things that it doesn't necessarily pay off. You have to take advantage of it. You got the invitation to come to this event, and you had to step up and reach into your pocket and make the time on your calendar to come here and be a part of it. My fear about America today is that folks don't realize that it's a participatory sport. You can't just show up. You've got to show up and take advantage of the opportunities. And I say that to you because of this. For all the hate that we have in the world, I think greed is more powerful. I look at what we would have once called Red China and we now call a economic juggernaut today. Greed, economic opportunity, folks taking advantage of opportunity is changing the human rights situation in China every day. And what we are going to do together is do the very same thing in Vietnam. How many of you have stories in your life of the family that showed up in America with $17 in their pocket, couldn't speak the language, and they now employ their friends and neighbors in their own businesses? That's the story that we have all across our district. While I very much appreciate you all coming here to visit with us today, I implore you not just to educate us today, but to go back home and educate your friends and neighbors too. Because I believe this, when it comes to the meaning of freedom, not what you'd find in the dictionary, but what you feel in your heart, freedom and opportunity. I dare say that there are families who have been in America for 2 generations, 4 generations, 6 generations, who don't really understand what those words mean. Religious freedom, we take that for granted here in America. First-generation immigrants, second-generation immigrants. The hope of America sits on your shoulders, that you will remind us all every single day why it matters. Why it matters that this great experiment in self-governance that we have, that we call the United States of America, continues for another day and another generation. Please, I implore you, every member of Congress you see today works for you. You are the board of directors of the United States of America. We work for you. Educate us, make us better. Well, I'm one of the new members of Congress. I am surrounded by excellence here in this body. About 50% of the U.S. House has been here 3 years or less. It's representative of who we have back home. It's my great pleasure to introduce one of my colleagues, Dr. Joe Heck from the state of Nevada. He's here today. He has been a tremendous leader in the freshman class last year, now as a sophomore this year. Please help me to welcome Congressman Joe Heck from Nevada.
Well, good morning. Thank you all for first the opportunity to spend a few minutes with you, and for all of you for taking the time to travel to Washington to see how your government works for you. I represent a district in southern Nevada, the Las Vegas suburbs, and we have a very large, diverse, and growing Asian American community. And a large part of that growth is due to an ever-expanding Vietnamese population. In fact, my district's Asian American population is about 15% the same as the Hispanic population, to show how much the Asian American community has grown in southern Nevada. And the reason why it's growing is because people are coming to Nevada to take advantage of the opportunities that this country provides. The freedom of association, the freedom of speech, the freedom of religion that allows the hardworking, entrepreneurial, family-centric Vietnamese community to thrive and to prosper in a dry desert like Nevada. And so, as a member of the Committee on the Education and Workforce, we are working hard to make sure that we set those conditions that allow those who want to start businesses, who are working hard to ensure that their children have the same, if not better, opportunities than they had, will have those opportunities that we all strive. Now, I'm a grandson of immigrants. And I remember when my grandparents worked hard to start their own business to give their children greater opportunities. I remember my parents struggling to be able to give me and my siblings greater opportunities. The fact that I'm the first in my family to be able to graduate from college, because each generation lifts the next generation. And we need to make sure that we allow every hardworking, entrepreneurial, prosperous Vietnamese American to have those same opportunities that caused those of you to immigrate here to immigrate, and to set the conditions for those that are following. And someday, it is our hope that not only will we have those opportunities here in America, but we can bring those same opportunities of freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of association to Vietnam. So I want to say thank you again, all of you, for taking the time to be here. Please enjoy the rest of your time in Washington, and God bless you.
Okay. Now, as you know, most members of Congress, they are not here unless they have the support of their spouses. You know, like many of us, I also have a boss. And my boss is my beautiful wife, Kate, who is sitting over there, along with my 2 daughters. Sophia and Bessie, you want to stand up and wave hello to them? And then I have my mother and my mother-in-law and my sister-in-law. They are all here to support this cause. The next person that I would like to introduce to you was, I have to say, one of my mentors in the House. When I first got here, he sat me down and he said, Joseph, whatever you need, I'm here, I'm your friend. Not only has he been a friend to me and a mentor to me, but he has been one of the main voices for our community for over 30 years. I would like to introduce you Chairman Frank Wolf from Virginia.
Thank you, Joseph. I appreciate that very much. And I want to thank all of you for taking the time and for being here today. I'm pleased to join other members of Congress in welcoming you to the first House Republican Conference Vietnamese American Meetup. My state, Virginia, has a vibrant Vietnamese American community that is actively involved in every facet of local, state, and national life. And I'm glad to see some friends and friendly faces from the state of Virginia. I've long been focused on the deplorable human rights situation in Vietnam. Just weeks ago, I joined with another group of Vietnamese Americans from around the country to mark the Vietnam Human Rights Day. The brutal reality is that human rights are regularly violated in Vietnam. The Vietnamese government officials continue to systematically suppress freedom of religion, expression, and association, and to pursue politically motivated trials and arrests throughout the country. And also our ambassador and our embassy has not been as friendly as it could be to those who are dissidents in Vietnam. Religious institutions are required to apply for permits, but many of these applications are ignored or denied, leaving congregations without the protection of the law and vulnerable to abuse. Independent writers, bloggers, and rights activists who question government policies and expose corruption or call for democratic change are often met with harassment, arrest, and even in this year, torture. Sadly, but the truth is that the Obama administration has failed to prioritize human rights and religious freedom in Vietnam and globally, and specifically in its interaction with the Vietnamese government, preferring to steer away from thorny matters of conscience. This is unacceptable and not in keeping with the American tradition best embodied by President Ronald Reagan, of boldly speaking out on behalf of those whose voices have been silenced whenever and wherever that may be. President Reagan, one of our greatest presidents in modern times, famously said that the U.S. Constitution that was signed in Philadelphia in that hot summer of 1787 is a covenant we have made not only with the people in Philadelphia in 1787, but also a covenant with all of mankind. This covenant transcends time and places and includes the people in Vietnam today. The U.S. government has an obligation to advocate forcefully and by name to stand, as during the Reagan administration, when people would go to Vietnam or go to places, they would bring names in and they would meet with the government. They would give them the names, say, we want these people released from prison. We would stand with those people. So our government has an obligation to advocate forcefully and by name for the immediate and unconditional release of all prisoners of conscience, including Vietnamese prisoners of conscience. The U.S. Embassy in Vietnam has an obligation to be an island of freedom in a sea of repression. During the Reagan administration, the American embassy was an island of freedom. And right now, under the Obama administration, the American embassy in Vietnam is not an island of freedom. It is not an island of freedom. And the American ambassador has failed the American with regard to the values that we have. Many of you have personally experienced the brutality of the Communist Party or have family members that did. You know that no amount of diplomatic niceties can mask the fundamental differences between a government that protects the freedom of its citizens and a government that violates those same freedoms. Your voice, the Vietnamese community in America, your voice is needed now more than ever to ensure that America remains a shining city on a hill, a land of opportunity, and a beacon of hope for the oppressed around the world and the oppressed in Vietnam. Thank you for what you've done. We can change Vietnam. We're 10 years from now. Vietnam is a democracy where there's freedom and people can move and worship and do whatever they want. And I am committed, and the Republicans in the House and the Republicans in the Senate are committed to doing everything to bring that about in our lifetime. Thank you very, very much. God bless you.
Well, you heard the chairman. He promised democracy in Vietnam in 10 years, but we would like to ask him to do it in 5. Okay. The one member of Congress who has been instrumental in bringing all of us together is the chairwoman of the conference, the chairwoman of the House Majority Leadership. It is through her effort, through the hard work of her staff, that you received the invitation to come here, that all of the staff, everyone that has been extremely helpful to us this morning in placing us, in directing us to this facility. Congresswoman Cathy McMorris Rodgers has been a tremendous voice in the Congress. She is the chairman of the Republican Conference, and she wants to learn what we care about as a community, what we want the Congress to address. So I want to introduce you the chairwoman of the Republican Conference, Congresswoman Cathy McMorris Rodgers.
Well, at the top of the list, I know what I want. I want Joseph Gao back in Congress. So, you guys welcome to Washington, D.C. We are thrilled that you are here. And as chair of the conference, it is my goal for us to be reaching out to people all across this country, engaging them and inviting them to be a part of helping us decide what are the issues that we should be focusing on, what are the priorities. And I am thrilled that we have over 800 people, Vietnamese Americans, who signed up for this meetup, this Vietnamese American meetup. Now, when I first sat down with Chairman Ed Royce, chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee, and we started brainstorming this event, I had no idea that the response would be this overwhelming. So it is great that you're here. This is an important discussion that we are going to have. There are people here from over 30 states, so I must ask, who's there from Washington State, right? Yeah, there's one, all right. Well, maybe I'll settle with the West Coast. Who's here from the West Coast? Yeah. I just thought I would tell you a little bit about myself. I'm from Spokane, Washington. I was born to a farming family. My family raised cherries, peaches, and apricots and sold everything at the fruit stand. I was the first in my family to graduate from college. I believe that I have lived the American dream. And as I have the tremendous honor now of serving in Congress, it is my goal to make sure that I'm doing everything I can to keep that dream alive and to make sure that that next generation of Americans has even more opportunities than I did. And so, so then this year I was elected to this position as chair of the conference, and there's 234 Republicans that are serving in the House, and I'm Thrilled that you've had the chance to meet some of them today. There's going to be others that address you this morning. There's going to be others that join you for lunch. And then I know this afternoon we're going to have important breakout sessions and conversations on specific issues, whether it's what is it going to take for economic growth and opportunities in communities all across this country, the important issue of human rights, and other issues that this Congress is addressing. But this is your opportunity to engage with congressional leaders from all across this country that represent all different backgrounds and all different experiences, and bring your issues to the forefront. So this is how it's supposed to work. We're thrilled that you're here. And for those of you on Twitter, I want to just point out the hashtag to you. It's Meetup 2013. So let's get the word out, and let today be just the beginning of building these important relationships and starting a discussion on issues that are important to all of us, but especially the Vietnamese American community. So thank you very much for being here.
So as the chairman said, it is extremely important for us to build a relationship with our members of Congress, because they have to listen to what our concerns are. They are here to represent us, and they do not know what we want unless we tell them what we want. And the one person that has to know what we demand within the Vietnamese American community is the chairman of the subcommittee in Asia. He is responsible for all of the foreign affairs issues in Vietnam, in Laos, Cambodia, and other parts of Southeast Asia. So I would like to introduce you the chairman of the subcommittee on Asia, Chairman Chabot.
Thank you very much, Congressman Gao, and it's great to be here this morning. I'm going to keep my remarks very brief. I learned my lesson many years ago about keeping your remarks brief when I spoke to my daughter's class. She was about in the first grade, I think, at the time. It was one of these bring your dad to class and tell them about your job kind of things. And after I got done talking to these first graders, this little girl came up to me, and she was just a little thing, and she looked up at me and she said, "Sir, that's the worst speech I ever heard." I felt kind of bad. I'm wondering, what did I say wrong to these kids? And my daughter wanted to cheer me up. So she came up to me and she said, "Dad, don't worry about her. She just repeats what all the other kids say." So I'll keep my remarks brief. Our daughter, by the way, made us very happy recently. She and her husband had our very first grandchild. So we're really excited about that. We're all enjoying that a great deal. Thank you. And my district, I am the subcommittee on Asia and the Pacific, as Congressman Gao mentioned, but I'm from the city of Cincinnati, Ohio. And Cincinnati's been in the news a lot recently. As you might have heard, we have an IRS office there. And apparently they do things only on their own, without any kind of instructions from here in Washington, D.C. At least that's what we hear. But I think there's a lot of things going on, and we're going to get to the bottom of all those things. But we're here today to talk about the important relationship between the Congress and the Vietnamese American people, and the country of Vietnam as well. And as Congressman Wolf said, there's still a lot of problems in Vietnam, particularly with respect to human rights. And that's something that we need to speak out on and make sure that our relationship with Vietnam, that's one of the main issues that we raise constantly. Both the administration, meaning the Obama administration or whoever's at the White House, and Congress need to raise this issue all the time when we're talking about our relationship with Vietnam. And we'll continue to do that. And Congressman Gao, I mean, he did a wonderful job when he was here in Congress, and as Congressman McMorris Rodgers said, we'd love to have him back here. he and our careers just missed each other. We were like two ships in the night. I had been here for 14 years. I was elected first in '94, but my district, I have a city, Cincinnati, and in 2008, President Obama defeated John McCain in my district by 11 points, and I lost that year back in 2008, and so I went home for two years. Coincidentally, those were the 2 years that Congressman Gow got elected and served here, so we just missed each other, and then 2 years later, he lost, and he had to leave, and I won and came back. But we're working together very closely on Vietnamese American issues, and we'll continue to do that. We've met in my office a number of times. We've met here in the Capitol building, and he's a tremendous individual who's serving in a wonderful capacity right now for the Vietnamese American people. But we really would like to have him back here in the very near future as a member of Congress. So God bless you all and have a wonderful time while you're here. Thank you very much.
Now, the chairman is having a hearing tomorrow on the issues of Vietnam in his subcommittee. So those of you who are still here, those of you who are local, we would like to ask you to attend the hearing, and it's in the Foreign Affairs Committee. And we really want him to press the State Department with respect to the many issues that we have that concerns us as a community. The negotiations between the State Department and Vietnam in regards to the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And we want to let them know that unless the TPP demands Vietnam to change, we will ask Congress to not ratify it. So if you're here tomorrow, and those who are local, please attend the chairman's hearing. The next person is from the state of Pennsylvania and the area of Pittsburgh. Can I see the raise of hands of the people from Pittsburgh and Pennsylvania? Oh, come on, I saw about 30 people yesterday. What happened? Okay, well, anyways, Dr. Murphy has been a great friend of mine in the House, and he, like the many members who are present here this morning, are very concerned in regards to the issues that we have as a community. And he's here to listen to us, and he wants to express a few words to us. So I'd like to introduce to you Dr. Murphy.
Good morning, great to be with you. And I like those flags. And thank you for being part of the American dream. Thank you for being here, and I want to say we are brothers and sisters together now, aren't we? We are not separate. We are, and I'm excited about that. Having gone to high school and grade school in the era of the war, and knowing that it was a long-term process of making sure that we had made a commitment early on, and now we are in a long-term commitment for building each other's nations. And it's because you are here raising your families, and I recognize you are making our nation better through the work that you do. Your friends, your neighbors, and I want to say three things then that we can be doing. First of all, for you. Because you are part of our nation, I know you are here studying and working and curing and inventing and designing and building and computing, teaching, all those things to make our nation better. And I thank you for that commitment to all your talents and all your sacrifices. That's your commitment. My commitment as a member of Congress, and certainly Congressman Gow made sure we knew about these things while he was here and continues to do that, is to work constantly for human rights and making sure that we are speaking out for our brothers and sisters of Vietnam and saying we will not tolerate harassment or human rights violations, and we're committed to do that. And thirdly, what we have to do together. It was mentioned earlier about our Declaration of Independence and our Constitution written and ratified in my state of Pennsylvania. And even at that time, it was people made up of many different backgrounds. If it were done today, it would even have more diverse backgrounds. But that is not an old document of 200 plus years old. It is a document that is we're constantly finding its relevance for today. And that is, at that time, a group of American colonists who said that they were going to throw off the yokes and chains of bondage and violations of human rights, and making sure that they stayed committed to freedom, and in fact pledged their life, their liberty, and their sacred honor. And that we are doing again today. So I am so excited to see so many of you here renewing that commitment we all have together to work together. Because with you, we are a nation under God and indivisible, and we will continue to fight and work and believe in liberty and justice for all, including our Vietnamese friends and neighbors. God bless you all.
The next person that I would like to have speak is also a great friend of mine. During the 2 years that I was here, I would routinely seek him out to sit right next to him on the House floor and to talk about human rights and religious freedom. He has been a great champion for the cause of our community in the last 30 years. And today, he's going to have a hearing in his subcommittee on the issue of human rights and religious freedom, in particular on the illegal expropriation of land of U.S. citizens. I cannot say enough about Chairman Chris Smith, so I will let the chairman say whatever he wants to say about himself and about what he's doing here in Congress. Chairman Smith.
Thank you very much, Ein. Let me just say, and I know you know this, but we, as Cathy McMorris Rodgers said so eloquently before, we miss Ein Joseph Cao. He was a great member of Congress, and I hope that everyone here will find a way, whether it be in the Senate or the House, to ensure that this wonderful, effective, and passionate lawmaker returns to Capitol Hill to continue doing the great work on human rights in general, but also specifically on the issue of human rights in Vietnam. I've been in Congress now 33 years, and from the very day I got here, began working on human rights issues and as it relates to Vietnam. But it wasn't until 1994, when the Republicans took control, that I met up with Dr. Tong from Boat People SOS. He walked into my office, and he had been very close to Ambassador Joseph Reese, who was our chief of staff on the committee. And Joseph was, as you might know, the former head chief lawyer for the INS and a very pro-refugee attorney and one of the most brilliant men I've ever met. But Dr. Tong came in and said, there are huge numbers of Vietnamese boat people, 40,000, a significant percentage of whom are true refugees, but they have been screened out by the Clinton administration in an effort to just close up the comprehensive plan of action. It was appalling. People who were true refugees being told that they would be forcibly repatriated back to Vietnam, where they would be sent to the Gulag, to enterprise zones, and other kinds of mistreatment. So I held four hearings on these people, went to High Island and to other refugee camps throughout Southeast Asia, including High Island in Hong Kong, and met with some of the most wonderful men and women who, again, were facing a very, very uncertain future had they been forcibly repatriated. As a direct result of Dr. Tong's insights, I wrote an amendment that passed in the House that said the United States would not in any way be complicit with sending these great people back to Vietnam, men and women who would have been, like I said, treated so harshly by the government in Hanoi. 20,000 people. And again, I want to give my gratitude and thanks to Dr. Tong. 20,000 people were reviewed and were construed to be as they were refugees and now live in the United States of America. Vietnam continues to backslide on human rights, on democracy, and frankly, the administration has not done the job that it ought to do when it comes to Vietnam. There was some hope when the bilateral agreement was under consideration that somehow Vietnam would matriculate from a dictatorship to a democracy if we only traded a little more with that country. Unfortunately, as we have learned from China and other dictatorships around the world, that doesn't work. Unless you have conditionality, unless you say we mean business on human rights, the people who are speaking up for freedom and democracy, for religious freedom and want to practice their faith as they see fit are not only marginalized, they are incarcerated. That has happened in China. It is happening in Vietnam. In 2006, we thought when the administration, in that case, the Bush administration, they thought that if they just gave up on the CPC designation and allowed the Vietnamese government to do what it was seemingly promising to do in return for a new trade agreement, that somehow they would allow religious freedom to flourish. On the very day that the bilateral agreement was accepted, the Vietnamese Foreign Ministry said, and don't you dare think that there's any conditions or any linkage to human rights. On religious freedom, there has been significant backsliding. I have made several trips to Vietnam over the years. On one trip, I went to Saigon, Hue, and to Hanoi, and met with over 60 individual dissidents and religious believers. Father Lee, the Venerable Thich Quang Do, and so many others. While they were all very pro-Vietnam, like you, and want a Vietnam that's free and democratized, they also said the government, regrettably, is backsliding. And of course, we know Father Lee was rearrested. Thich Quang Do continues to be under pagoda arrest. And so many others now are in prison. Matter of fact, those who signed Block 8406, a great human rights manifesto that is reminiscent of what Václav Havel did in Charter 77 in the Czech Republic, that became a list of individuals for which this government then tracked down and incarcerated and bullied because they came out in the open and said, we want human rights. Finally, let me just say this. I've reintroduced, as you know, the Human Rights in Vietnam Act, the Vietnam Human Rights Act. It is a bipartisan bill. We are building co-sponsors, and I ask you to try to get members of the House, and of course on the Senate side as well, to join in. It is a very modest, but I think a very reasonable, calibrated response to say to the Vietnamese government that there will be no increases in non-humanitarian foreign aid to that nation unless there is significant progress in a number of categories that are enumerated in the bill, including combating human trafficking. Some of you may know that in 2000, I am the author of the Trafficking Victims Protection Act, the landmark law to combat human trafficking. Vietnam ought to be a Tier 3 country. It exports its own labor, its own individuals, with the full complicity of so many high officials in the government. We just had a hearing a couple of weeks ago, and it's my 14th hearing on Vietnam human rights abuses. Dr. Tong was able to bring over a woman who spoke about her sister who was trafficked into Russia with the full aiding and abetting of individuals in the Vietnamese embassy. Matter of fact, when the government of Russia sent in police to liberate these trafficked women, they were tipped off by high government officials in the Vietnamese embassy in Moscow. That is complicity, the likes of which few other countries have engaged in. And yet they are not Tier 3. I've called on, and I know you have called on, the Obama administration to place Vietnam on Tier 3. Dr. Tong and others have done landmark work on documenting the labor exploitation throughout Southeast Asia especially, of Vietnamese workers who are being sold and turned into commodities and money being made in huge amounts by government officials. The legislation, the Human Rights Vietnam Act, also calls on Vietnam to be designated a country of particular concern because of its religious freedom violations, whether it be against the Buddhist church, the Montagnard, the Hmong, the Christians, all the different groupings of faith. Every one of them deserved the respect and the dignity and the protection of law. Instead, they have a government that treats them with impunity. The legislation, as you know, passed twice in previous years, Congresses. This is the third try. Third try, hopefully, will be the charm. My hope is that as people understand that we have to get serious, this administration has to get serious, that there will be a groundswell of support for the bill and for the whole movement to protect human rights and the dignity of the great people of Vietnam. Your presence here today is extraordinary. And I want to thank all of those, including our conference chairwoman, for her leadership in bringing you all together. And again, I'm Joseph Cao. You've got to send him back to Washington. We need him. And thank you for your tremendous work on behalf of human rights in Vietnam.
The next person that I would like to introduce to you, we have something in common. We're both ex-seminarian. We were in training to become a Catholic priest. We both left and then eventually ran for Congress. But the congressman who I will introduce is here a lot longer than I have. But anyways, I'd like to introduce to you Congressman Jeff Thornberry from Nebraska.
Well, good morning, everyone. Such a pleasure to be here with you, and thank you all so much for coming so far to be here to gather with us. I'm very, very grateful to you all. You know, Joseph was right talking about early seminary days. I once knew a young man who was about to be ordained a Catholic priest. He was Vietnamese in his origins, where he was born. And we were close enough friends that I could share this with him. I told him, I said, I don't understand the language. I don't understand Vietnamese at all. I can't even hear between the words. I can't make a distinction between the words. And this young man looked at me and he said, you have to understand, Jeff, Vietnamese is the language of heaven. And I said, oh, okay, why is that? He said, because only God can understand it. Joseph Gao was a good friend when he was here in Congress. I've been here, I'm in my 9th year, and several years ago, this young man showed up with incredible energy, incredible insights, was willing to stand up and stand in the middle of the most controversial bills and give a gentle, prudential, but firm perspective as to what he believed to be right. And that was Joseph Gao, Congressman Joseph Gao. We're very proud of the time that he served here, and I agree with Congressman Chris Smith. It'd be wonderful to have him back. He lent an extraordinarily well-diverse, gently spirited, but impassioned view, not only on human rights, but a whole host of policy issues affecting us as Americans. So, and what Joseph said to you earlier in terms of how it is necessary for the changes that you want to see, the impact that you want to have here, for you to actually come and make your case and show up. And you've done that, and I'm very proud, and I appreciate his leadership in coordinating the gathering today. I represent about 3,000 persons who are of Vietnamese origin. They're members of the Vietnamese community in Lincoln, Nebraska, where I live. I'm very proud to be their representative. I have a number of good friendships in the community there. In fact, on Saturday, I will be invited to the final profession of several Vietnamese nuns as they make their profession before our bishop in the Immaculate Heart of Mary Church. I've been invited to the Buddhist temple in Lincoln when the priest from Canada came down, a very special guest. They asked me to be there. The Vietnamese community in Lincoln has done two things extraordinarily well: preserving the past, preserving the heritage, preserving the highest norms of ethnic value, and at the same time integrating successfully, enculturating successfully into America. So I'm very, very proud to not only be representing a significant community of Vietnamese persons in Lincoln, but also to watch under Joseph Gao's leadership and all of you who are here, really take on the idea that it is necessary to engage in national politics. Several years ago, when the vote came up to have a trade preference for Vietnam, I voted against it. Now, usually I vote for these things. I think it's important that economic liberalization be brought about internationally when appropriate. But I had met with the Vietnamese community back home, and they said, Congressman, you have got to tie this to human rights progress, or else you will be empowering those who continue the repression. And they were right. And so I took a vote against that because I thought it was appropriate. And I think that for us to leverage the right outcomes, the very purpose of trade, the very purpose of economic liberalization, is the well-being of persons, the well-being of society, which begins in an understanding of the inherent dignity and rights for all. And when you have a country that is economically liberalizing, but using those means to continue to repress and not liberalize the highest virtues and norms, you have to say no. I'd also like to thank our conference chair, Cathy McMorris Rodgers, for organizing today's event. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing that I think that we're doing here, and I look forward to continuing our dialogue. Thank you so much. God bless you all.
The next person that I'd like to introduce you has been extremely vocal on the issue of human rights and religious freedom, and he is from the great state of Texas, Representative Ted Poe.
Good morning. Any Texans here? For you non-Texans, we're going to learn a little language here. Representative Fortenberry talked about Vietnamese. I want to tell you a little about Texan. The word y'all is singular. So all y'all is plural. So howdy, all y'all. And thanks for letting me stop by. It's good to see you here, and as stated by my colleagues, we cannot stress the importance of you being here this day, at this hour, to let your voices be heard about what is taking place in a land far, far away, but a place that is close to your heart. Last Monday, we celebrated Memorial Day, where we honor those who, in America, who've gone off to serve and didn't come back. And we had in Houston, Texas, which is the second largest cemetery in the world, where we have our fallen, we had a contingent of Vietnam veterans there, a large contingent of Vietnam veterans. And in that group of veterans were also a large contingent of Vietnamese who fought side by side with Americans during the Vietnam War. And after the war was over and the communists took over, they came to America. And we welcome them all to the United States. And we welcome our veterans back. The struggle in Vietnam is not over, because the evidence is against the Vietnamese government. In my other life, I used to be a judge. I was a judge for forever. And I spent time in the courthouse, and all we did was deal with the word justice. Justice. And what is taking place in Vietnam is not justice. The first human right is the right to worship freely. That is the first and most important human right. But according to the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom, quote, the government of Vietnam continues to expand the role over all religious activities and severely restricts independent religious practices. Can you imagine a country that has religious security police? What are they for? Well, those are the thugs that go and deny the basic human right of others to worship as they choose, whether they are Catholic or Protestant or Hindu. It makes no difference to these folks. They are trying to kill the basic human right by the security police of denying people the right to worship as they please. I'm very disturbed about all of the reports that you know about, the torture of religious prisoners, the sexual assault of monks approved by the government, the confiscation of property and forced evictions. This ought not to be. And Vietnam should know we are watching. We know what you are doing, and we don't like it, and we're not going to allow you to get away with denying people the basic human right of religious freedom. The government continues to oppress people in the name of the government wanting to suppress people. And what concerns me is that our own State Department kind of gives a wink and a nod of what's taking place in Vietnam. Here's what the State Department says. Some Christian groups reported harassment at administrative obstacles. Well, where I come from, torture is not an administrative obstacle. Torture is a crime. Torture by government is a criminal activity, and this is religious persecution to its fullest extent. And the State Department of the United States needs to be telling all of us the truth about what's going on instead of saying it's an administrative problem in Vietnam. So we need to work on the State Department. And as Chris Smith has said, Vietnam should be level 3 on our tier list, and we should not approve them or give them a wink and a nod. So I've joined House Foreign Affairs Committee Chairman Ed Royce in introducing legislation to call on the Secretary of State to list the Socialist Republic of Vietnam as a country of particular concern so that we can sanction them. It is very important that we stand together on this issue, that we as members of Congress do what we can to first raise the awareness, raise your concerns, raise the concerns of your family members that are a long way away, and we're going to stop this nonsense because justice requires it, and justice is what we do. Thank you very much.
We are very honored to have as our next speaker the second most powerful member of Congress. He is the House Majority Leader. I cannot say enough about Leader Cantor, but he cares about our community and he is concerned about the issues that affect us and issues that affect the country of Vietnam. So here I would like to introduce you Leader Eric Cantor of Virginia.
Good morning. It really is just a terrific sight from up here to see all of you that have come here from across the country participating in our democracy, a democracy that shines as a beacon of freedom to the world. So thank you very, very much for being here. You know, I want to thank Nguyen from Louisiana for helping put this together, as well as our conference chairwoman, Cathy Rodgers. We mean it when we say we want to work with your community. And so much of what your agenda is about is manifested in the gentleman that I believe will probably be speaking next, and that is Chris Smith of New Jersey. Chris Smith of New Jersey has been an unbelievable warrior in the fight for human rights across the globe. And your being here, I know, gives him a lot of strength, gives Ed Royce a lot of strength, and his committee members like Ted Poe, and it means a lot that you're here. You know, so much of what we're talking about in Washington today reflects on who we are as a country. Who is America? And, you know, I stand here in these walls of the Capitol and always, never, ever do I lose the sensation of how blessed that we are to be Americans. You know, and I think about how it is I'm here to begin with. And my family story is one of a fairly recent immigrant. And that is my grandparents, they lived in Eastern Europe. They were subjected to religious persecution, anti-Semitic pogroms by the czars of Russia. And like so many of their generation, were lucky enough to escape, were lucky enough to leave. But it took courage for them to leave a land that they knew, and it took a determination to start anew. And they came here. My grandmother came through New York Harbor, eventually made her way down to my hometown of Richmond, Virginia. And it was there where she had already got married to my grandfather, and they began a family. They had 2 sons, and then my grandfather died, so my grandmother became a widow at a very young age as a single mom working in a grocery store that she and her husband had opened. Back in the days, it wasn't a very friendly environment for minorities. She happened to be a young, single Jewish woman, a widow in the segregated South. But she clung to that hope of what this country stands for. She clung to the inspiration of America as a statue of liberty to the world. And through hard work, determination, through her thrift and her faith, she was able to pull herself up, as well as my father and uncle, into the middle class of this country. And I know she would just be utterly blown over if she were still with us by the fact that her grandson is now a member of the United States Congress, much less the majority leader of the U.S. House. That is what this country is about. And so your being here and advocating for human rights, for religious freedom in Vietnam, and as we should say elsewhere, where there are despots, there are maniacal dictators denying human rights, not just to women and minorities, but to all. America is not like that. America should never tolerate that. So as we appreciate your strength in coming here to advocate for a strong America, we also are advocating for that too. We don't believe, as conservative Republicans, we don't believe in big government, but we do believe in a big America. America's influence is good for the world, and we're going to continue to pursue policies that benefit to all freedom-loving people. Now, here at home, we have a domestic situation where we've got to focus on growing our economy. We've got to focus on the very kinds of things that my immigrant grandparents focused on. It's how were they going to make it on their own? They didn't come to America looking for anything else other than just the opportunity to go and pursue their happiness and to earn their success. And right now, too many families, too many working people in this country are having a very difficult time. We still have a very lackluster economy, but as many of you know who are raising families, you got challenges. How are you going to afford to pay the bills at the end of the month? We've got increasing prices at the gas pump. We have college tuition that for a parent is probably one of the #1 things you want to save for that continue to skyrocket. You have healthcare costs, essential for caring parents. How do you deal with that? And so our Republican agenda this year in the House is very much focused on those working families. We passed a bill which says help those people who don't have the skills necessary to fill the jobs of the 21st century. We've got to help people get up on that ladder of success. The documents of the founding of this country, the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, they guaranteed a right of opportunity to pursue one's happiness. That is what continues to guide us here in this U.S. House today. So along with that, and the great vision of a big America abroad in defense of freedom and democracy, I know that we join together and will never, ever tire of advocating on behalf of those who need our help. So thank you all very, very much, and God bless, and look forward to working with you.
I'm not here to speak again, but to do an introduction, and it is for Dr. Tong, just to how important it is that people be factual, filled with information that is actionable. When Dr. Tong walked in my office in 1994 and said we need to do something about all of the people who will be forcibly repatriated, we held 4 hearings. The administration was hell-bent on sending everyone back and closing the CPA. Dr. Tong provided such insight as to what was truly happening on the ground, and that as a result of the 4 hearings, the Rover program was established, because there were some people inside the Clinton administration who were concerned, even though others were not. So it is really a great honor to introduce to you, you know him already, the head of Boat People SOS, a true advocate, a man who has made an enormous difference here on Capitol Hill for decades, Dr. Tong.
And on behalf of the organizers of the Vietnam Advocacy Day, I would like to first of all express our appreciation to Chair Cathy McMorris Rodgers and Chairman Ed Royce and many other leaders in the House Republican majority for extending their welcome to us today. We expect about 800 members of the Vietnamese community across the country to come here today. And now it is my great privilege to invite someone from very far, all the way from Orange County. She just flew in, and that is our very well-known Supervisor Janet Nguyen.
Kính chào quý vị quan khách và kính chào quý vị trong cộng đồng của chúng ta. Good morning. Are you enjoying DC? Oh, come on. Vietnamese American do better than that. Are you enjoying DC? Let the congressional member know. I want to first thank Congresswoman Cathy McMorris Rodgers, Chair of the House Republican Conference, and the House Foreign Affairs Committee Chairman, our own Orange County Congressman Ed Royce, for the honor of not only being here with you today, but to be able to speak before you. As the highest-ranking elected Vietnamese American female official in the United States, and who, along with my families, were among the boat people like yours, fled Vietnam in search of freedom and democracy after the war ended, crossing the South China Sea, my family landed in Thailand. It is a privilege to be part of a group of national leaders who have made it their mission to protect human rights and religious freedom around the world, particularly in our case, Vietnam. In my capacity as a member of the Orange County Board of Supervisors, the county has the largest population of Vietnamese residents outside Vietnam. I've been the only Vietnamese American elected officials to testify before one of the Senate subcommittee in regards to the blatant human rights violation that the government of the Socialist Republic of Vietnam continues to shamelessly perpetrate against its own people. I've also continued to advocate for the numerous release of a lot of the human rights activists that are currently in prison unlawfully. The mission of protecting human rights requires unwavering perseverance and dedication. These challenges test the resolve of not one or just a few, but all of us. Not one voice, not two voices, but with thousands of voices coming together, it makes us stronger and louder for Congress and the United States Senate to know how important this is to us, Americans. As we move forward in this constant struggle to guarantee the basic human rights on which our nation is founded, I ask that you remain committed to this noble cause and stand with me, stand with Congressman Ed Royce, stand with Congresswoman Cathy McMorris Rodgers, Leader Eric Cantor, and so many others. Stand with us and continue to fight and tell Vietnam that it is not what they're supposed to be doing. This is an issue, and I can see around this room, not just the first generation, not the 1.5 generation like myself, who was born in Saigon after the war ended, or the second generation or third generation. This is an issue of all people who believes in basic human rights and religious freedom as a noble cause, and that's something we all deserve. I commit to you, as I have for over 15 years of my public service, as a staffer, as an elected official in the city, and as a county supervisor, and until way into the future, whatever path it takes me, I commit to you that I will stand by our community and my ancestors' homeland to continue to fight for freedom and democracy for all human beings. At this time, I've asked Colonel Leslie Lee to join me to just say a couple words of why he, the generation that gave my family, and you who fought in the war, gave my family, and this country has given my family life. And so I asked Colonel Lee to say a few words because he embodies the commitment of the generation that's given us younger generation the privilege of being able to understand the culture, understand why we are here today. Colonel Lee.
Thank you, Supervisor Janet Nguyen. I think she deserves another round of applause. She's a very, very good speaker, isn't she? Thank you very, very much. First of all, I would like to thank Congressman and Chairman Ed Royce. When he opened his remarks, he mentioned Little Saigon. Yes, I am presently chairman of the organization called Little Saigon Community Development Organization, the organization that founded Little Saigon 25 years ago. So we are very glad that he mentioned that to us today. Thank you very much. I am also president of the Vietnamese community in Southern California today. And we came here after 5.5 hours flying across the country. It's a state called westernmost state, California. We came here to raise our voice again, that we demand the communist government in Vietnam today must stop human rights violations, religious freedom violations. It's very serious. Everybody in the world knows this. So in order to show to the world as well and to the Congress of the United States of America our unity in voicing our opposition of the violation in Vietnam today, I request that very politely please stand up and show our unity of the voice, demanding Vietnam, communist Vietnam, must stop violation of human rights and the violation of religious freedom. Thank you very much. I thank you so much. We applauded. Yeah, thank you, U.S. Congress, and thank you, the world.
And now I'd like to introduce to you all a congressman from Florida, Congressman Dr. Ted Poe. And thank you, Congressman, for being very patient.
Good morning. Xin chào. My name is Ted Yoho. And you guys might find this hard to believe, but when I was politicking, I've never been in politics before, when I would show up someplace they didn't know me, they said, I thought you were Asian. And I said, what if I was? You know, I'm an American, we're running as an American, and I applaud the Vietnamese American community because I think you exemplify the greatness, not just of your culture, but the greatness of what exemplifies men and women in a society that values God-given rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So I commend you because you set a great example for the rest of the world. And thank you for being here and part of our country. I am so proud of that because you are Americans, and God bless you. And this is a message that we need to carry around the rest of the world for what all the other speakers have said ahead of us. Because I think there's an innate quality in all people, that desire to be free, that desire to be self-determining, and that desire to spread that to your family and live life on your means. And I am so blessed, and I know you guys are too, to be blessed to live in this country. And the thing that makes that possible is this little book. This little book is the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and the Declaration of Independence. And I know a lot of you probably have read this, if not all of you. And if you look at it in size, it's not an epic in volume, but yet it's an epic in ideology of what it says free men and free women can do in a country that protects those rights. So God bless you. Thank you for being here, and spread the word.
So right now, a quick announcement here. There's a press conference upstairs in 15 minutes. So please follow Miss Trang Khánh, cái đội áo dài. Dạ vâng, mời cô Kim Oanh. Dạ. And I have to apologize because there are so many members of Congress who have attended today's meetup. So we have to extend this session a little bit. And the next person I'd like to invite up here is the most venerable Thích Viên Lý, the Secretary General of the Unified Buddhist Church of Vietnam in the world. Yes.
Xin kính chào quý vị. Cảm ơn tiến sĩ Nguyễn Đình Thắng. The situation of human rights in Vietnam is very gloomy. Right now, Vietnam is violating human rights laws and are stripping their citizens the rights of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. There are almost 90 million people in Vietnam who are deprived of rights we take for granted in America. The Unified Buddhist Church of Vietnam is banned by the state. Many Buddhist temples and Buddhist schools have been taken by the communist government. Buddhist monks and followers are being held in prison and labor camps for peacefully advocating the right to the existence of the Unified Buddhist Church of Vietnam. Therefore, on behalf of the Vietnamese American Unified Buddhist Congress in the United States, we respectfully urge you to call upon the Vietnamese regime to release immediately and unconditionally the Supreme Patriarch, the Father Nguyen, and all others in prison or under house arrest for peacefully advocating their religious freedom, human rights, and democracy, and repeal all legislation restricting the rights of religious freedom. It is very important that Vietnam restores the legal status of the Unified Buddhist Church of Vietnam and respects the human rights of all people in Vietnam. I deeply appreciate your time and attention. Thank you very much.
I would like to invite Pastor E. Hinney to the yes, thank you. Pastor E. Hinney is a pastor of the Montagnard Christian Church, and I have had the privilege of having known him for a long time when he was still a refugee. He was among those Montagnards who continued to fight after the end of the war. And he used to be a commander.
Thank you, Dr. Tang, have time and invite me to on behalf of all the Montagnard Christian. I am here with my colleague for and Montagnard Human Rights. Please stand. Thank you. We come here today on behalf of the 1 million voice of Christian across the Vietnam, and also all the Christian, Catholic, Protestant, Mennonite, Presbyterian, and all those who want to practice the religion believe in free. Pastor each year has been many reports for human rights. On my confused, why the Hanoi have said, according official announcement, Vietnamese Communist regime determined to train 21,811 pastors, and they say the goal propaganda tightly to control ethnic minority Montagnard living several provinces, district, village. Also, their plan is to propaganda, to preach their own doctrine until the people accept the faith. And they will force people to believe the kind Christianity according to their Communist Party. The people must first, the worship the party first, and the people must follow the government rule, and the Christian must not place God above all. I'm confused about that. That is what Hanoi propaganda right now. Discrimination. Discrimination one, all the Christian in Vietnam and for persecution do not allow they operate the church free because they contact, I'm so glad they said contact Reverend Ihini, who is the one, the opposite, against the religious, what they has been designed. Absolutely, I don't understand why it's forced people to believe one way. Today, my brother and sister, God for all. God doesn't distinction the race. All the Vietnamese, American, Montagnard, and around the world, we are the children of God. God love very much. I speak on behalf of more than 300 those who are still in prison. I speak that over a thousand house of prayer. I speak that other 5,000 those the widow and the children no father because father in the prison. I urge you to support the legislation and the bill. Human rights must turn to respect and worship God, any God, freely. Thus, I urge you to speak out to all Congress and any that power the leader of the democracy in the world today. I request, number one, if Hanoi said, we respect the freedom of religions, must release immediately prison who they put in jail, who turned them to say they are against the Hanoi government. Must free them immediately. Second thing, please return all property who those belonging to the all the Buddhist, Catholic, Monsignor, Christian Missionary Center in Ban Ma Thuột, Đắk Lắk, Pleiku, Đắk Nông, Đà Lạt, and anywhere, to all us religious leaders should be take care of that place. Number three, I ask Hanoi must give and approve all of us from United States, around the world, or from overseas. We have free to go, remodel, reestablish, to remodel what religions we had prior to 1975. Today, my brother and sister, I share my belief with you and my prayer. I always with you from this day until we see the Vietnam, number one, have respect the human rights and a free practice the religious. And we will pray our Congress, our Senate will pass the bill both house, and they will have in the guideline a new road map bring out the Vietnamese country to the freedom. Thank you for your pay attention.
Announcement, Dr. Thủy Trần and Commissioner Andy Nguyen. If you're still here, please go upstairs for the press conference, and Hiếu too. Please go upstairs, the press conference is going on. Thank you. And now I'd like to invite Thế Khương Đặng. Oh, he just left, right? So I'd like to invite Dr. Trâm Hồ, Chair of the Vietnam Human Rights Council.
Xin kính chào quý vị và cảm ơn tiến sĩ Nguyễn Đình Thắng. Chúng tôi là bác sĩ Hồ Ngọc Trâm. Thank you to the honorable members of Congress. I'm Dr. Tram Ho. I'm very humble and grateful that you have taken your time to hear and reflect about human rights and religious tolerance, the pillar of our great republic. I sincerely hope and plead that you and your fellow congressmen to join in one universal voice to uphold human rights and religious freedom with millions of Vietnamese seeking separately the dignity and rights in life. The following are my modest recommendations. First, under the Trade Act of 1974, which states that the United States administration should not grant generalized system of preference to any countries that seizes property of U.S. citizens. Over the last 38 years, the Vietnamese government has illegally confiscated the properties of millions of U.S. citizens. And in 1995, under President Clinton's administration, the Vietnamese government had paid $208 million US in compensation to about 200 Americans. So the modest estimations of illegal confiscation of properties of Americans with Vietnamese origins is approximately $50 billion of US dollar. Second, The current administration intends to conclude the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which includes Vietnam, by October and will ratify it by the end of this year. We respectfully ask Congress to force the Vietnamese government to uphold its obligation to respect the rules of law and the treaties, to show Congress improvement in human rights and religious freedom, and to release all political and religious prisoners. Human rights, religious freedom, and democracies are the basic and universal values to all humans, the bond that we all share. Third, Congress to support the Human Rights Act, H.R. 1897, and the Vietnam Human Rights Sanction Act, S. 929. Last but not least, I hope that you all will join the Tom Lato's Human Rights Commission to adopt prisoners of consigned Vietnam. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chabot. And now I'd like to invite Dr. Đỗ Văn Hội, Chairman of the Federation of Vietnamese American Communities of the USA. Thank you. Please welcome Dr. Hội.
Kính chào quý vị. Mr. Chairman, Member Congress, staffer, and Vietnamese American community leaders. On behalf of the Vietnamese American community of the USA, we would like to thank to all the organizing committee to arrange this historic event, the first national meeting between Vietnamese American community leaders and House Foreign Affairs. As you know, at the fall of Saigon to northern Vietnam communists, millions of Vietnamese left the country to seek for freedom, and many settled in America. During the journey of escape, many perished in the sea, robbed, killed, raped. During the Vietnam War, more than 58,000 American soldiers have sacrificed their life to protect freedom of Vietnam. We would like to thank them and their families. After arriving in USA, Vietnamese Americans gradually assimilate into the new life. With the support of the American people, we contribute our part to the success of the country. 38 years has passed since we left Vietnam, but we still remember those who left behind. The Vietnamese people in Vietnam suffer under communist regime, no democracy, no freedom, no religious freedom, and with the threat of China expansion. Again, thanks all of you to invite us to the Capitol to share our thoughts about human rights and other issues about the Vietnamese American community. We would like to ask you, the American people, to support Vietnam to become a free country with democracy, free election, and independence from China. Thank you very much. God bless America.
Now, the very last speaker, but not the least at all, is Golden Grove Council Member Chris Phan. I have had the privilege to know this young man before he got elected. He was determined and he won the election. Thank you.
Kính chào quý bác, kính chào cô chú, xin chào mấy em, and kính chào quý đồng hương. I'm so honored to be here, and I want to say thank you to Anh Thắng, Anh Cao, and all of our communities to give me the chance to be here to speak with you. And also to say on behalf of the second generation, the younger generation, to say thank you for all of your sacrifice and all of your work to give us the chance to be here, to be who we are. After serving in the United States military for 8 years as a naval officer, following the footsteps of many of our fathers, our uncles, I want to come back to serve our community. And that's what I did last year. And as you know, in the military, we don't have a lot of money, but we do have a lot of determination and a lot of grit. And so I walked every single day, door to door, to meet everybody in Garden Grove, because I knew that otherwise I wouldn't be elected. Through the rain, through the shine, every day I walked. And thank goodness the people voted for me. Now having the opportunity and the chance to serve, what I want to do is to make sure that we encourage the next generation of public servant. That it is wonderful to be able to serve our community, and that it's a calling and it's a privilege that we must make sure we keep to heart. Because we're in a country where democracy is actually given to everyone. In Vietnam, right now, if we want to run for office, we can't, because we're not allowed to, because we're not of the party. But here we can. So on behalf of all of us, the younger generation, I want to thank you to everyone, our fathers, our uncles, our aunts, to give me the chance to be here, but also to encourage the next generation to step up, to work hard, and to make our parents proud. Thank you very much.
Now for the closing remark, I would like to invite Congressman Joe Wilson.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's a very great honor for me to be here with you. I am chairman of the Military Personnel Subcommittee and had the extraordinary opportunity to visit Vietnam twice. I was there last August. I was there for missing in action recovery and POW recovery. And while I was there, I want you to know that the Vietnamese American population is so much appreciated. You are making such a difference for the people back in Vietnam who look at your success. They look at your assimilation into American society. They look at the success of what you're achieving through freedom and democracy. And so I just want to wish you well. We're honored to have you here in Washington. In fact, you're an inspiration for all of us. And if our office can ever be of service to you, it's Joe Wilson, South Carolina. I'm very grateful for the Vietnamese Americans who live in the District of Central South Carolina. We are just blessed to have such extraordinary people making a difference on behalf of the United States and the American people. But again, you're making a difference throughout Southeast Asia as a positive example of what can be achieved in freedom and democracy. God bless you. Thank you.
Okay, time for lunch. Thank you very much for participating. I want to thank Congressman Gao and Dr. Tong. It's been a pleasure working with them to coordinate this, and we're going to do this every year, and this will be the start of a wonderful partnership. I also want to thank my partners, Elizabeth Heng and Melissa Medina from the Foreign Affairs Committee. Been fantastic to work with, and enjoy lunch and welcome. Thank you.